From the Diaries of Anne Frank. Dr. Neely Kaplan-Myrth is a family physician in Ottawa, an anthropologist, Fulbright and Commonwealth scholar, and a mother of three who has spent her life advocating for equitable access to healthcare, for Indigenous self-determination in health, for disability rights, for 2S LGBTQ+ health, and mental health care. She's published 3 books: Much Madness, Divinest Sense, Women's Stories of Mental Health and Healthcare, Women Who Care, Women's Stories of Healthcare and Caring, and Hard Yaka, Transforming Indigenous Health Policy and Politics. She's also written numerous academic articles and newspaper articles that have been published in the Ottawa Citizen, the Toronto Star, and the Globe and Mail. When the COVID-19 pandemic began, she reached out to CBC to ensure that family doctors were seen by the public, by our patients, and by our colleagues as leaders, vital contributors to the healthcare system. She organized a panel with the Prime Minister to discuss COVID-19 vaccine and a rollout across Canada called Jabapalooza in clinics in Ottawa, and to give more than 17,000 doses of COVID-19 vaccine to essential workers, people with disabilities, and others. During the convoy occupation of Ottawa in February 2021, she wrote an open letter signed by more than 2,000 Canadian doctors, nurses, allied professionals to assert that Canadian healthcare workers would not tolerate hate in our streets. She was chosen as Newsmaker of 2021 by the Ottawa Citizen for her advocacy. In 2022, she was elected to the Ottawa Carleton District School Board as a trustee. As an outspoken, progressive woman physician and as a Jewish Canadian, she's spoken out about the toll of misogyny, death threats, and anti-Semitic hate. Copies of her 4th book are available here tonight, just outside those doors. Breaking Canadians, Healthcare Advocacy and the Toll of COVID-19 from University of Toronto Press in 2023. She will have her official book launch for Breaking Canadians at the Ottawa International Writers Festival on May 4th at Library and Archives Canada. And you can visit the Writers Festival's website for more information. She will be reading with her daughter, Frida, as I mentioned, who is an aspiring writer and actor and is the same age as Anne Frank when she wrote her diaries. And it has a show coming up in a fringe festival. I forget where. Edinburgh Fringe Festival. So ask her about that afterwards and check it out. So welcome to the stage, Dr. Neely Kaplan-Myrth and her daughter, Frida.
So just before I begin, I'm just going to explain that the increase in Jew hatred over the last few years of the pandemic has coincided with the rise in anti-vax and anti-science rhetoric, anti-LGBTQ vitriol, and anti-democratic, populist, anti-woke movements, which, as we know, includes the banning of books. A graphic novel version of Anne Frank's diary was published in 2018. In 2023, groups such as Mums for Liberty and No Left Turn in Education sought to ban the diary of a young girl from schools in Texas and Florida. I think they succeeded. As we know, most of the books on the banned list deal with topics of race, gender, and sexuality. This movement is directly tied to groups that organize to oppose COVID-19 mask mandates in public schools, who oppose what they refer to as critical race theory and gender ideology in the classroom. They refer to Anne Frank's diary in graphic novel form as Anne Frank pornography, because she talks about a crush she has on a boy while in hiding. Talks about their first kiss and just general musings of a teen. Mums for Liberty insisted that it's a form of grooming children, which is the same language they use with a lot of anti-trans hate. The Anne Frank organization responded with the following statement: graphic biographies or novels are very suitable for reaching young people. Banning books, in this case the graphic adaptation of Anne Frank's diary, because of certain passages, is a missed opportunity to introduce young people to Anne Frank's life story and the history of the Holocaust. So tonight, my daughter and I are going to read some excerpts from the Diary of a Young Girl. And just to give you some background, Anne Frank was born in Frankfurt, Germany in 1929 to parents Otto and Edith Frank. She had an older sister, Margot, and after Nazis came to power in 1933, her father moved to Amsterdam. Then her mother and Anne and Margot joined him there in 1934. The German occupation of Amsterdam began in May of 1940, with plans to deport Jews from the Netherlands to concentration camps. The first non-Dutch Jews were deported to Auschwitz-Birkenau in July of 1942. During the first half of July of 1942, Anne and her family went into hiding. They were eventually joined by 4 other Jews, Herman August and Peter Van Pels, and Fritz Pfeiffer. For 2 years, they lived in a secret apartment in Amsterdam. The apartment was located behind the business offices where Otto Frank had worked as company director. Anne referred to the hiding place in her diary as the secret annex. Otto Frank's friends and colleagues helped to prepare the hiding place and smuggled food and clothing to the Franks. For her 13th birthday in June of 1942, Anne received a blank diary. Anne begins her diary. 12th of June, 1942.
I hope I shall be able to confide in you completely, as I have never been able to do in anyone before, and I hope that you will be a great support and comfort to me.
Saturday, 20th of June, 1942.
I haven't written for a few days because I wanted first of all to think about my diary. It's an odd idea for someone like me to keep a diary, not only because I have done so before, but because it seems to me that neither I, nor for that matter anyone else, will be interested in the unbosomings of a 13-year-old schoolgirl. Still, what does that matter? I want to write, but more than that, I want to bring out all kinds of things that lie buried deep in my heart. I want this diary itself to be my friend, and I shall call my friend Kitty. No one will grasp what I'm talking about if I begin my letters to Kitty just out of the blue, so albeit unwittingly, I will start by sketching in brief the story of my life. My father was 36 when he married my mother, who was then 25. My sister Margot was born in 1926 in Frankfurt on Main. I followed on June 12th, 1929, and as we are Jewish, we immigrated to Holland in 1933, where my father was appointed managing director of Travis NV. The rest of our family, however, felt the full impact of Hitler's anti-Jewish laws, so life was filled with anxiety. In 1938, after the pogroms, my 2 uncles, my mother's brothers, escaped to the USA. My old grandmother came to us. She was then 73. After May 1940, good times rapidly fled. First the war, then the capitulation, followed by the arrival of the Germans, which is when the suffering of us Jews really began. Anti-Jewish decrees followed each other in quick succession. Jews must wear a yellow star. Jews must hand in their bicycles. Jews are banned from trains and forbidden to drive. Jews are only allowed to do their shopping between 3 and 5 o'clock, and then only in shops which bear the placard Jewish shop. Jews must be indoors by 8 o'clock and cannot even sit in their own gardens after that hour. Jews are forbidden to visit theaters, cinemas, and other places of entertainment. Jews may not take part in public sport. Swimming baths, tennis courts, hockey fields, and other sports grounds are all prohibited to them. Jews may not visit Christians. Jews must go to Jewish schools, and many more restrictions of a similar kind. So we could not do this and were forbidden to do that, but life went on in spite of all of it. Our freedom was strictly limited, yet things were still bearable.
Wednesday, 8th of July, 1942.
Dear Kitty, years seem to have passed between Sunday and now. So much has happened. It is just as if the whole world has turned upside down. At 3 o'clock, someone rang the front doorbell. I was lying lazily reading a book on the veranda in the sunshine, so I didn't hear it. A bit later, Margot appeared at the kitchen door looking very excited. The SS have sent a call-up notice for Daddy, she whispered. Into hiding. Where would we go? In a town or the country? In a house or a cottage? When? How? Where? These were questions I was not allowed to ask, but I couldn't get them out of my mind.
Wednesday, 29th of March, 1944.
Dear Kitty, an MP was speaking on the Dutch news from London, and he said that they ought to make a collection of diaries and letters after the war. Just imagine how interesting it would be if I were to publish a romance of the secret annex. But seriously, it would seem quite funny 10 years after the war if we Jews were to tell how we lived and what we ate and talked about here.
Tuesday, 11th of April, 1944.
Dear Kitty, who has inflicted this upon us? My feeling for justice is immovable. I know what I want. I have a goal, an opinion. I have a religion and a love. Let me be myself, and then I am satisfied. I know that I'm a woman with inward strength and plenty of courage.
Thursday, 25th of May, 1944.
Dear Kitty, there's something fresh every day. This morning our vegetable man was picked up for having 2 Jews in his house. It's a great blow to us, not only that those poor Jews were balancing on the edge of an abyss, but it's terrible for the man himself. The world has turned topsy-turvy. Respectable people are being sent off to concentration camps, prisons, and lonely cells, and the dregs that remain govern young and old, rich and poor.
Friday, 26th of May, 1944.
Dear Kitty, again and again I ask myself, would it not have been better for us all if we had not gone into hiding, and if we were dead now and not going through all this misery, especially as we shouldn't be running our protectors into danger anymore. But we all recoil from these thoughts too, for we still love life. We haven't yet forgotten the voice of nature. We still hope. Hope about everything.
Saturday, 15th of July, 1944.
Dear Kitty, for in its innermost depths, youth is lonelier than old age. I read this saying in some book, and I've always remembered it, and found it to be true. Is it true that when grown-ups have a more difficult time here than we do? No. I know it isn't. Older people have formed their opinions about everything and don't waver before they act. It's twice as hard for us young ones to hold our ground and maintain our opinions. In a time when all ideals are being shattered and destroyed, when people are showing their worst side and do not know whether to believe in truth and right and God, it's really a wonder that I haven't dropped all my ideals because they seem so absurd and impossible to carry out. Yet I keep them. Because in spite of everything, I still believe that people are really good at heart. I simply can't build my hopes on a foundation consisting of confusion, misery, and death. I see the world gradually being turned into a wilderness. I hear the ever-approaching thunder, which will destroy us too. I can feel the sufferings of millions, and yet if I look up into the heavens, I think it will all come out right, that this cruelty too will end, and that peace and tranquility will return again. In the meantime, I must uphold my ideals, for perhaps the time will come when I will be able to carry them out.
Anne's diary ends here. An epilogue says, on August 4th, 1944, the Gestapo made a raid on the secret annex. All the occupants were sent to German and Dutch concentration camps. Anne's father, alone, returned. In March 1945, 2 months before the liberation of Holland, Anne died in the concentration camp at Bergen-Belsen. The Anne Frank organization says, Otto Frank, Anne's father, later recalled that on the day that the Gestapo broke into their attic, a sergeant picked up Mr. Frank's briefcase. The sergeant asked if there were any jewels. Mr. Frank said there was nothing but papers. The sergeant opened it, threw the papers and the diary on the floor, and put the silverware and the Hanukkah candles into the briefcase. The little group, which had spent the last 25 months in the attic, was led away. The room was left in disarray. However, there remained on the floor the diary of a young girl. The Nazi soldiers had failed in their mission. They had left behind a statement to the world. They had left behind the story of a girl in adolescence, her troubles with her parents, and her young love. Through the survival of the book, the thoughts, the hopes, and the beliefs of Anne will endure forever. So why read this now, and what does this mean to my family? Frida is the age that Anne was when she was taken to a concentration camp. The Diary of a Young Girl is a book that haunts many of us who are grandchildren of Holocaust survivors. Reading Anne Frank as a child was reading a diary that could have been written by my grandfather's sisters. His entire family, his sisters, his parents, his cousins, his uncles, his aunts, were murdered in the Holocaust, along with 6 million other Jews, and approximately 250,000 Roma, 250,000 people with disabilities, thousands of people accused of homosexuality, and others. My grandparents escaped from Poland to Canada. They survived through their stubbornness, good luck, and cunning, and they warned us as children that we could never trust that we are safe. Jew hatred did not begin with the Holocaust. For millennia, we have been segregated, slaughtered, our communities wiped out in pogroms, driven from one country to another. Jews were forced into exile by Babylonians in 586 BCE. For over 2,500 years, Jews lived continuously in North Africa, the Middle East, and the Gulf. Until the 1960s, approximately 1 million Jews still lived in Iran. More than 850,000 Jews were forced to leave their homes in Egypt, Lebanon, Syria, Iraq, Yemen, Libya, and Morocco, expelled because they were Jews. In Europe, all Jews were banished from England for 400 years, from 1290 until 1656. 100,000 Jews were expelled from Spain in 1492. Jews were forced into ghettos in Venice in 1516 and other gated and locked Jewish quarters all over Europe. From 1881 to 1914, more than 2 million Jews were chased out of Eastern Europe, while others were killed in pogroms. Still, I did not believe my generation would ever be unsafe. And then in 2021, I began to receive emails and phone calls threatening to kill me and my family, calling us dirty Jews, telling me that we would be turned into lampshades, which is a Holocaust reference. I was called the K word for the first time in my life. I've reported more than 25 hate crimes to the Ottawa police between November of 2021 and September of 2023. I wasn't safe in 2022 putting my Hanukkah menorah in the window of my home. Since October 7th, anti-Semitism has gone up exponentially around the world. History repeats itself. Whether we're progressive or conservative, secular or orthodox, Zionists or not, Jews come in all political and religious stripes. Globally, we're yet again unsafe in our communities, in our workplaces, and in our schools. We're disappointed but not surprised by how easy it is for our allies to turn away, to blame Jews for Jew hate, to alienate Jewish peers and Jewish friends. In Ottawa, in the last 4 years, Jewish students have been taunted, swastikas drawn in schoolyards and on school buildings. Jewish high school students have been targeted by classmates who use racist slurs, assault them, and greet them with Heil Hitler. They intimidate them on social media, and across Canada, graffiti, vandalism, and violence have increased, with attacks on Jewish community centers, synagogues, and schools. We are less than 1% of the Canadian population, yet hate crimes targeting Jews in Canada account for 67% of all hate crimes targeting a religion. One of the common responses is for Jews to be silenced. Stop complaining, we're told. You don't understand racism, we're told. You don't understand genocide, we're told. We're demonized, told that we're too pushy, too noisy, too powerful, too aggressive, too white, too affluent, and too educated. In December of 2023, the late Prime Minister Brian Mulroney spoke to Canadian Jewish Congress. He acknowledged that anti-Semitism is deeply entrenched in Canada. Prime Minister Mackenzie King did not want Jews to get a foothold in Canada. Jews were turned away as immigrants, Government policies limited property ownership, put quotas on university entrance, barred club membership. This latest surge of anti-Semitism did not suddenly surface out of nowhere, Mulroney said. It is part of the historical continuum that was only briefly interrupted following the Second World War. So I've lived the reality of Jew hate for the last 4 years. Today, this morning, I received another letter, which I sent to the Ottawa police, telling me that they hope I die and calling me a dirty Jew. So, as Anne Frank said, it's once again as if the whole world has turned upside down. Anne Frank believed in the basic goodness of humanity, even as she was sent to her death. Unlike Anne, given world history and human history, I am not optimistic.